Welcome to Bullshit Free Witchcraft. I'm Trey Dorn, and yep, we are back for episode 4. And it's the end of October. And you know what that means. In a few days, it'll be October 31st, unless you're listening to this afterwards. And then, hey, it was October 31st at some point. In any case, because of the monumentally important date that this episode's releasing around, we thought we'd do something special, even though this is only the 4th episode. And that is, there are two ways we could have gone with this. We could have either talked about the spiritual significance of Samhain, or, and this is the other way, is that we could fully embrace the spirit of Halloween and talk about ghost stories. Because why wouldn't you take time to talk about ghost stories? And this episode is going to be at least an hour long. This is not going to be a short one. Normally this podcast is meant to be between 20 minutes to a half an hour, but this one's going for an hour or more, depending on what I cut out and what I don't cut out in the edit bay. Because I'm not alone this episode.
I'm Lee Bradford. I don't know what else to say about that.
And we're going to have a little conversation. We're going to be talking about ghost stories.
Okay. I got opinions.
Well, okay, so like everyone who I've ever met who's a witch, in my experience, has at least some interest in ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to be one of the few universal interests, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's someone out there who is doing witchcraft who has absolutely no curiosity, or but that just seems unlikely, because if you're interested in the power of doing magic, why wouldn't you also be interested in things that in theory exist as pure energy or whatever?
Right. Well, I was obsessed with ghosts for a while. Like, I want to say 14-ish years old. Like, I went to one of like those ghost hunting things that met at my local library, and I was too young to go. Yeah.
I went to one that met at the local hotel conference center once in my 20s. Those things are hilarious.
Yeah, no, I was too young to go on any of their trips. But I'm sure you know what kind of wackadoos go to those things, so...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Every once in a while, I have these thoughts, like, man, maybe I'm just a real crazy person, and there's a reason people don't like me. And then I remember when I was 14, going to the library and meeting these people who were more obsessed with ghosts than I was, and thinking, well, at least I'm not that entire room of people.
Yeah.
Not saying, I mean, I'm sure they're very nice people, but man, they would not shut up.
Well, yeah. And I think also people take a lot, like, I am, first off, I'll make it clear, I'm a very firm believer in the paranormal, because, obviously I'm sitting here having this conversation, but I also... Some people just believe anything, and it drives me nuts. Like, I swear to God, if I have to, like, so I'm a big fan of BuzzFeed Unsolved's supernatural episodes, because, well, they're hilarious and they never find anything. But they more recent seasons, they've introduced using the spirit box, which is just this little radio thing that flips through channels, and it's like really clearly just picking up clips of different radio things that are playing at that moment, and they keep finding, like, it's saying this, and I'm like, I don't hear that at all. And that's your brain.
Is it saying Yandy or Laurel?
Yeah, that's your brain looking for patterns. It's like I don't think EVP works either, but at least, like, you can get me on board for why you believe that. You know, it's like,
it's a radio.
Yeah.
It's a radio.
There are literally now, if you put a Faraday cage around the room and then put that in the middle of the room, maybe. But because that should block out static too, but not this.
After our conversation last time, I decided to see, what there actually was in Ohio that was haunted. Because I did that when I was living in Indiana. I hadn't done it here yet. And it was just kind of like, well, why haven't I? And Ohio is crazy haunted. Like, it's a pretty big state. And there's tons of different history. And anybody who's at all interested in the Civil War will tell you a bunch of different stories about what happened in the Civil War and why there's ghosts everywhere. The problem is, I can see the bullshit. I can see, like, where these are gimmicks and why people believe these things. Like, I know that the tavern downtown it might actually be haunted, but the one that says, oh, we have a ghost cat. He's a friendly ghost cat, so, like, don't let that prevent you from spending your money here. And the haunted mansions downtown too.
Oh God,
that's a great way to make money after the person who owns it dies.
I have had many experiences. I've had many personal experiences with ghosts over the years, or spirits, or whatever the heck we're going to call them, because we'll probably have a conversation about what's a ghost later in the show. But none of them, zero of them, have been in a manor house or like some dead rich person's place. And I've been in places like that. I've toured the Pabst Mansion. None of my experiences have been in. I lived with a ghost for a while, and it was in a house built in the 1960s, a duplex.
Haunted duplex.
It is the haunted duplex, and we can talk about that later.
But it's only on one floor. On the one floor.
So I always find restaurant ghosts hilarious. So I forget the name. I think it's the Country House. That might be the name of it. It's this restaurant in Clarendon Hills in suburban Chicago that apparently the women's restroom is haunted.
Just the women's restroom, huh?
Yes, just the women's restroom. It says so on the menu.
Moaning Myrtle, huh?
Well, I'm just like, first off, I'm like, bathrooms make a lot of noises, especially in the Midwest, where like there's massive temperature shifts. But whatever. Apparently, there's a ghost in that bathroom. They make a good burger.
Oh, all right. Well, not the ghost. The ghost doesn't make the burger.
Do we know? Do we know?
I haven't actually visited any of the places in Ohio yet that are haunted, though there is one just down the street from me where it was apparently a doctor killed his wife, and you can see her, like, he beheaded her. And you can see, like, if you drive down the road at night, you can see the ghost of her whatever, and her head will roll across the road. And it's like, are you sure it's not a possum?
I need to put a wig on a basketball.
I know. It would be so easy. And with Halloween coming up, and I'm just down the road, and I can't pass that up.
Buy a Nerf ball, buy a mask of anybody's head, really, as long as it doesn't have a beard.
Yeah. I'm trying to think who there would be. I mean, there's still Hillary Clinton masks out there, but I think that's a step too far.
Yeah, no, that feels wrong.
We could do one for Donald Trump, and we could just pretend, and I can be happy with that.
You buy a Donald Trump head, you buy a cheap Arta wig, you hot glue it on. I think this will work. And
then your plan gets foiled by some meddling kids, and the estate gets sold to the rightful owner instead of the spooky ghost pirate. And that's how you make a Scooby-Doo episode. We're 3 steps away from a Scooby-Doo villain here. I think that's when we need to stop.
No, I think we need to go full Scooby-Doo villain.
All right.
The only way that makes sense. Fight fire with fire. I don't know. It's so I think there's an interesting experience whenever someone first sees a ghost. And it's, I don't know, for me, like, when the first time I saw one, like, I had this moment where, like, I thought I believed in ghosts, and then I discovered but then I really believed in ghosts. Like, you go from that moment of, like, I think ghosts are real, and this ghost I've heard stories about is real, and then you see it, and you're like, oh shit, it's real, run. It's... Like, so I grew up I grew up in the Milwaukee suburbs. I went to Wauwatosa East High School, and there's this legend about a theater ghost there, because every theater has a legend of a ghost, right?
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Now, I researched this. So it's supposed to be called Fits, and there are like a ton of stories, and I went and researched, and I could not find verification for a single one of them. Like, I dug through the school's history, the town history, because I'm a massive nerd, and... Like, I went to the library and was pulling up, like, school yearbooks from, like, the 1920s. Like, I really went down a rabbit hole, I'm realizing now in retrospect. But it was the 90s. It was the best I could do. You know, I couldn't go dig online for obituaries because, again, it was the 1990s. But anyways, as far no one really knows the story about how it happened, but there are always stories about like stuff moving around, and I mean, frankly, it's a bunch of teenagers probably putting off a whole bunch of energy in a building. I'm thinking more poltergeist than ghost, but whatever.
That's honestly how I feel about that opera house I went to in Wapakoneta. That's now an antique store. That place is haunted as fuck, but it's not by a ghost.
Right. And so, but anyways, so like I always knew it was like I felt it, like I believed it was true because I'd heard enough stories from people who I trusted and who I knew wouldn't lie to me. But I never saw anything myself until one day I was helping backstage during so our theater was staffed by students all the time. It there was no there was a teacher who was in charge of monitoring it, but there wasn't if someone wanted to use the theater and needed lights or sound setup or anything like that, it would be students who were brought in. It would be part of the theater club. The Tosa East players would show up and run the equipment. And I really wasn't there to do anything, but I was keeping a friend of mine company who was. And the backstage bathrooms are not on the ground level. They're up 3 flights of stairs backstage, up these metal clanking stairs. And I went up them to they're actually 2 flights. There's a stone set and a metal step. I went up the metal flight of stairs because it was closer, but I noticed how loud I was, and I knew that sometimes when people go up and down those stairs, you can hear it in the house. And it was a house full of I think one of the sports teams had reserved the theater and were having some meeting at night there. And so I realized how loud it was. So I went up to these after I got out of the bathroom. I was like, oh, I should try to take the stone stairs. And I cut through. There's this makeup room that you have to cut through to get to the other set of stairs. And I got to the other set of stairs, and they were locked. And so I was like, okay, I've got to go down the metal stairs. And so I walked back into the makeup room, and while I was in there, in the darkened room, this blue ball of light formed in the middle of the room.
Shit.
And then it darted around the room and went into the wall.
Well, that's fucked up, man.
And I'm really glad I went to the bathroom right before that. And I went bolting out of that room, flying down those metal stairs like nobody's business, and I apparently was very audible, but I did not care because holy shit. And that is, I think I was 17 at the time. That is the first time I ever saw a ghost, and I was like, oh shit, no, I didn't used to believe. I really believe now.
Make a believer out of you.
Oh boy.
Amazing. Wow. Yeah, so you actually saw an orb in real time, not just in a photograph.
Right, but that's also why, I see photos oh, it's an orb. I'm like, that's dust.
That's dust. Anybody who has ever owned a camera can tell you that's dust.
Yeah. I mean, it was something I'd only describe as an orb only because it was, spherical and glowing, but if it only showed up on your camera, that's dust.
Yeah, I would say so. I actually do. There was a photo I have from when I was like all in on my ghost believing shenanigans, uh, from like the art studio in my high school, and it was just this big white blob in front of my friend Mike's head, and I was like, "That's an orb. It's a ghost." So
That's
I would like,
dust.
yeah, I would zoom in, I'd zoom out. It's like, what does it mean? I was like, absolutely. I was like, man, this place is haunted. My school had only been built in 2001, mind you, and it was at this point 2003. But
Oh,
everybody had
Jesus.
made, yeah, people had made all of these like stories about how somebody had jumped from the balcony because there's a balcony in the teachers' lounge. Somebody jumped from the balcony and splatted before they even built the building. You know, it's like one of the workers jumped. You know, but it's like
That would have been news.
that there would have been news. I would have seen that. But I was, like I said, like
There'd be a
14 years
memorial
old.
plaque.
Exactly. Well, I mean, the person who constructed our school was super shady. Like, he stole bricks from the construction site to build his own house.
Of
Like,
course he did.
like he. It's
Gee,
not
your house seems to exactly match the school. I don't know how that happened.
the school and the prison, mind you, because they were designed by the same person. Yeah, it's not a great school. So I mean, you can understand why the energy in there would give you the impression that it was haunted. But like the steps would be uneven one day and not uneven the other day. The pipes would burst all over the place. Stuff like everything seemed kind of warped. And the reason what for that was the
Embezzlement?
ground embezzlement. They didn't actually spend a whole lot of time setting the groundwork. They were in a hurry, and we were built on a floodplain.
Oh, jeez.
The front window cracked like just a couple of years ago, and I haven't even graduated that long. So it's not a great school, but I was fully believing that it was because it was haunted. And now I look back and I am ashamed of myself.
I at least went to a school that had been like that's been up for like 100 years.
I wish, man. That sounds cool. But that's
And the theater's in the old section of the building because they greatly expanded it in the 60s. But the theaters, it used to have a tower, and then they got rid of the tower because they couldn't adequately have fire escapes for it, like
okay.
for the amount of time it took students to get out of the building. So they tore down the tower, but there are photos where it has this tower on it with like this glass dome, and it's beautiful. And it has
Your school sounds kind of cool.
It has a third floor that is sealed off because, again, the same fire escape problems, but it's just storage. So, like, every year students break into the third floor of the school.
Tradition.
The only unsealed entrance to the third floor is through the theater. Which is, and you have to go up this staircase that goes over the stage, and so, like, you're, like, 2 or 3 stories up in the air over the stage.
Sometimes I'm starting to think that like theaters are haunted by design. Like they have like it's a requirement for it to be a theater.
Because there's a secret door to a sealed off the sealed off tunnel under the school is also accessible through the theater. It's really weird. Like everything's through the theater. Like cuz there's a grade school across the street from my high school, and there used to be an under the street tunnel that still exists. It's just sealed off on the grade school end.
Okay.
And you can
all right.
And the doors to that are in the theater. They're in the theater basement where we store all of like where they store all like the old set stuff.
All right.
That place is like full of hidden doors and passages. It's like no wonder there's a frickin' ghost.
That's another one of those urban legend ghost stories is the tunnels that run beneath the town, because everyone has them.
Right.
Even Muncie, Indiana.
Yeah. Well, the 1960s happened.
Yeah. between
Cold
service
War.
tunnels for Cold War, and then like there was service tunnels for like really bad blizzard days and stuff like that. And then in Ohio, we have the unfinished subway tunnels where they got so close to finishing, and then they ran out of budget.
That subway's famous.
Yeah, that's the story for I think that's Elevator Brewing Company. Oh no, Elevator Brewing Company was the person who was murdered on the corner. There's a bar downtown. I can't remember what it is. Where that is connected to those tunnels, and apparently, if you are alone in the bar around closing time, you can see a hooded figure darting about in the back of the bar, and he will disappear into the tunnels. And there's no way to get in or out of the tunnels, but they are there. So there is a hooded figure darting around back by the tunnels.
That just sounds like a teenager.
I thought so too, but I also did not realize that it was connected to the underground substation.
Ah,
so I kind of want to explore that, but I also don't want to do that. I'm afraid.
Yeah.
And also, I am small and I don't run very fast.
Well, I'm sure there are plenty of Urban Explorer videos on YouTube that you can do it vicariously.
I think I'm going to just do it vicariously because I am the first bitch to get murdered in a scary movie, and I don't like that. I'm just going to stay a florist, okay?
I don't know. It's like every like any actual like paranormal experiences I've had, none of them were like I never had like when I go looking for ghosts, that's when I never find them. It's when I'm trying to avoid them or just go about my day those are the times that I've historically like encountered things. And it's like I don't like, because there's a park in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, Owen Park, which is right next to the university campus, and it's been the source of like a couple of really weird experiences and then one overt like kind of terrifying one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just kind of terrifying.
Well, okay, so it's a park that it's right along the river next to the university. Like it's the Chippewa River goes through the middle of the university, and it's like it's across the river from the main university, but it's right next to the Fine Arts building. And it's right off, like, at the intersection of First Street and Water Street. And Water Street's the bar district. So it's, like, it's in a very student neighborhood. And when I was a college student many moons ago, so early 20s, my friends and I used to do goofy things like walk there at 4 a.m. and hang out on the playground. Because we were bored college students and, no one had class on Tuesdays. So... And we went there a bunch of times, and the playground was well lit, and since we weren't, and all the cops were over by the bars, so like we weren't going to get shooed off the playground by anybody. And obviously, it's 4 a.m. If there are any children out there, that would actually be more terrifying.
Yeah.
So
Come play with us, Danny.
There are no ghost children in this story. But so, anyways, like I one time tried to like the first experience like was easily dismissed as being in my own head, right? I tried to meditate once in that park and had a really weird, uncomfortable feeling, like something didn't want me there, and it kind of made me kind of iffy. But like it's one of those things where you're not sure if this is like, is this something or is this just me being skeeved out? Because sometimes it's just me being skeeved out. And, because I could just be skeeved out because, it's a public park and, I might not be in the safest position from living things. So, that could just be my instincts telling me that wasn't a good thing to do. Because, I could get, kicked by somebody. Not, you know what I mean? Like, it's...
Because people are jerks.
Right. Well, and we're in a student neighborhood in the middle of the night. Drunk people are jerks. But anyways, so, but that's kind of what made me really, and so I started just kind of get uncomfortable when I looked at, because part of the park is wooded, is this whole wooded area, before you get to the bandstand. So yes, in the first episode of The West Wing, when Josh Lyman asked if Eau Claire, Wisconsin has a bandstand, it does. As he threatens a congressman from Wisconsin. But so, like, whenever I looked into those woods, I kind of got a weird feeling, but I never, like, saw anything overt, right? Like, it wasn't, but I just started to get a weird feeling, and so one night, like, I knew a bunch of my friends were hanging out at that playground. I had been out late doing something else, and then I was going to meet them there, and so there's a sidewalk that runs alongside the woods, that it's by the road, and so to the left of me is all, like, apartments, but, like, no one's out and about. To the right of me is just this woods that has been making me feel skeeved out and uncomfortable for like weeks. And so, like, I feel fine on the playground, but the woods just make me feel nervous. And I just, like, I vocalize I'm going as fast as I can, because I'm walking as fast as I can. And I swear to God, what feels like a whisper an inch away from my ear, I hear clearly the words, "Go faster."
Shit.
And, like, I don't hear it all in my left ear toward the street. It's right in my ear. And it is clear as day. And that's when I started booking it.
Wow. I would too, because that's fucking frightening.
Right?
Absolutely frightening.
And I've talked to people and, like, just tried to make sure it wasn't some sort of auditory hallucination. It, like, if it had been an echo, I would have heard it in both ears, because, you know, sometimes sound travels strange at night. Like, There's the recurring joke about the ghost phone in my neighborhood.
The ghost phone.
Well, because it's clearly just sound echoing from somewhere, where, like, in the middle of the night, you will hear the clear sound of a phone ringing.
It's just somebody else's phone ringing.
It's like some phone in an office ring. It's like, it's that stereotypical, like, digital, like, ring that you hear on phones made in the 80s and later. And it's like, there are a couple of office buildings that are higher than everything else around here, and so, like, you'll just be walking through a suburban neighborhood in the middle of the night and you'll hear the ghost phone, and you know it's just someone's phone. But it seems to come from but you can hear that in both ears.
Yeah.
This was just right in my ear.
Yeah, that's fucking creepy, man.
Yeah, I don't go to that park.
I wouldn't. After that, I would not either. That's nuts.
But that's just a public park. It's like, I mean, probably awful things have happened there.
Something there just does not like you.
It's a public
like you
park.
Specifically.
Yeah, it does not. It is not fond of me. And so I don't go there. But it's,
that's fair. I kind of relate to this. I actually do have an experience that I would like to share, and it's not something that I have. It's something that I have not started talking about until a couple years ago, because I was sure that I was going crazy, and there's a little bit of backstory here that I'm gonna have to set up. So, like I said, I was obsessed with ghosts when I was younger, and part of that is because we used to joke that our house was haunted, and the thing is that there was no actual evidence that it was haunted. It was a house built in the 1950s. So things would settle. The floorboards weren't always even. There was a draft. So things would fall off shelves, or you'd hear a thump in the middle of the night. It was probably just a fucking squirrel. And it was also set way back in the woods, and everybody it gave the idea of looking like it was haunted just because it was shrouded in darkness pretty much always. And one thing that kind of put it into my head that the place was haunted, like really haunted, was I would wake up all the time with bruises and scratches on me.
Cue the spooky organs.
Spooky organ. And I was really concerned, but I didn't tell anybody because that sounds crazy.
Yeah.
So I would just tell people that my house is haunted, and I would let them draw their own conclusions. And I learned later that what was happening is I was sleepwalking. and I would injure myself when I was getting back into bed. Now, when you sleep disorders are different for absolutely everyone. If you, I don't know if anybody remembers what they do or what they're thinking or what they're dreaming when they sleepwalk, but I didn't remember a goddamn thing. So I just thought that I was sleeping soundly and something was like hitting me upside the face or something like that.
Yeah.
So I was sleepwalking and I would injure myself. This stopped right about when I was 12. I stopped doing it. I just grew out of it. I stopped doing it, and life went back to kind of a normal thing. I got out of my ghost obsession when I was probably 16, and I kind of grew away from that. And then one day I was returning home from college. I think I was 20 years old. And I was staying in my parents' house. I was sleeping in the same room that I had slept in when I was a kid. And it's on the second floor. And I sit bolt upright in bed. And I was sleepwalking. I am conscious of the fact that I was sleepwalking. Now, you have to remember that I would not remember anything that would happen during these bouts of sleepwalking. It would just happen. But I was aware that I was not awake, that I was dreaming. And I sat straight up because I heard a noise. And that noise was a song. It was this tune, this like haunting melody that wove in and out of like it. I felt it in my bones. Like I could feel it rattling in my rib cage. I sat up and I got out of bed. And the only thing I can really remember was that song. I had to find it. I was drawn towards it. And I can remember only a few things, like I remember leaning against the wall for support, putting my hand on the rail, going down the stairs and into the kitchen and facing the back door where the screen was open because it was a hot June evening. It had to be 3 a.m. It was humid and it was hot, so we kept the doors open. And I was facing that back door, and all of a sudden, I'm in the middle of the kitchen. It snaps, and my head is clear, and I'm awake. I'm aware. I know what's happened, and I'm just standing naked in the middle of the kitchen, staring at the back door, wondering what happened to this song, why I'm here, and I am frightened.
Yeah.
And I don't tell anybody this. Because at the time I was trying to figure out, like, because I was going through anxiety disorder, my anxiety disorder really bad.
Okay.
And I did not want that on me, and the sleepwalking coming back, and the auditory hallucinations, and all of that at once. So I had to, like, figure out whether or not that was a thing that was still happening, like, if it was a symptom. But it only happened once, and never again. So, I don't know, I would not call that a ghost. Like, every time I rethink about it, like, I replay it in my head.
Yeah.
I think fairies.
Yeah.
Because I was going straight towards the woods. But it was scary as fuck, let me tell you. And, every once in a while, I will hear, like, in the bass line of a different song, or I'll hear it in the soundtrack of a TV show or a movie. I'll hear something that's just similar to that song, and I will have to, like, turn it up, and I'll have to stop talking and listen to see if that is in fact the song. And some things get really close, but they lose it after a minute, and I'm like, shit. Yeah, like, that's really the only thing that I can call an experience as a ghost story that's not a one of the made up ones about, like, a ghost cat or something like that. Like, that's probably the scariest supernatural thing that's ever happened to me.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying. Especially when you're not sure if you're crazy or not. Yeah,
that would. So what do you think a ghost? Like, I don't actually think that ghosts are usually. I don't really believe that they're the spirits of dead people most of the time. Like, I don't even know if I ever believe that. I'm a skeptic when it comes to like. I mean, maybe they are. I don't want to like obviously eliminate any possibility, but everyone like always describes like these paranormal experiences to like some guy died here, whatever. But I honestly just think there are things that exist in the world that are energy and have always been energy.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
well, that is, I'm pretty much on board with you. I think that it's easier for people to personify energy as a person who has passed on, partially just because literary references always make ghosts out to be people. Yeah. It helps us deal with the uncertainty of death. It helps us put an explanation on something that we cannot explain.
Yeah.
I don't think it's always that, though. Like, sometimes a place is just spooky. It's just a spooky place, and it's because it has an energy. Like, roads that go on forever in one direction, those are haunted. But they're not haunted by a ghost. They're just unsettling, like the entirety of Nebraska.
Oh, God, yeah, I-80 through Nebraska. It's you can take your hands off the steering wheel if your alignment's good and not have to put them back on for like 20 minutes. I'm not saying I've tested this, but I've tested this.
There's a point in Nebraska where you just don't even see like signs anymore. You just see road, and like it puts you in a trance, and that's a dangerous thing to be.
Nebraska is flat and yellow.
It's flat and yellow.
The only interesting part of Nebraska is Omaha, which is trying to escape into Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Nebraska is like if the gods created the world, when they got to Nebraska, they just hit the yellow fill tool.
That's a great way to describe Nebraska.
When you're driving across Nebraska, you have a lot of time to think of ways to describe Nebraska. Mm-hmm. Especially when you know you have to do it again in like a few days the other direction.
Well, we actually took 90 through Iowa. The first time we were going to Yellowstone, and I took 80 through Nebraska instead on the way back.
Yeah.
So I only had to do it once. But I think probably the most unsettling part about Nebraska is like when you're coming in from Wyoming and you see like the oil rigs just like, and I'm making the motion with my hands, but you can't see the motion because this is audio.
This is radio.
Like the kind of like slow and controlled up and down movement of the oil rigs while they're working as they dot the line, as they kind of dot the scenery, and it's just like the same. I get the same feeling about windmills, like the wind farms, because they move slowly and unnaturally, but they almost look alive. And there's that is really hard for like. You come in from Wyoming and you see that, and it's like, that is creepy looking.
Well, I lived for 7 years right near a giant wind farm in Indiana, so because there's one right outside Lafayette, and it's actually really amazing to drive through it. Like the first time I drove to Lafayette, when my wife and I first moved there, we were looking at apartments, and for some reason Google Maps took us on this, like, it didn't tell us to take the exit to the highway, which is right next to the apartment complex. No, I don't know why. It had us get off on 231, like, so far away from town, but, like, drove us through the windmills. Like,
that's
on this
really
little
weird.
2-lane highway. And it was, well, first off, they are amazing close up. Like, because they look big from far away, but when you are, like, at the base of them, they are gigantic. Like, especially those ones.
My first not my first encounter, but one of my most memorable encounters with windmills was I was driving towards Pennsylvania for a show, and it was night, and I saw the red blinking lights, but they were slightly offset, and I was like, what is that, an airport? No, that's not an airport, but they were slightly offset, so they would blink out of turn.
Yeah.
And I was like, what in the hell?
The blade going in front of the light on the top of the tower.
Yeah. So I just was it was pitch black except for these bright red lights.
Yeah.
It's like I have driven through hell and it's in Pennsylvania.
When you take I-65 towards Lafayette from the north, so you're coming from Chicago and you're taking it towards Lafayette, there's a moment when you get to the wind farm where you crest over a hill and you don't see any windmills, and then you go over this hill and it's just a sea of them. And when you do that in the dark, it is just this sea of red blinking lights across the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
And it is actually really kind of amazing, especially in the snow. But
I feel like that's got kind of a ghost energy too. To bring it back to our whole discussion, place, it's like when we talk about liminal spaces and having places having an energy that you can't really, that are unsettling or they're not neutral. Just any kind of place that feels not neutral.
Well, I'm now convinced there's only one Steak and Shake.
I think you might be right.
All doors go into it. So, because I used to live near Steak and Shake. I used to go there all the time in Lafayette because I lived equidistant between two Steak and Shakes. And, well, you know what? I take it back. One of those Steak and Shakes is unique because it's just 10 feet smaller and dirtier. But the one we went to all the time by the highway was this really nice Steak and Shake, and we went there, my wife and I would go there pretty regularly, a couple times a month, because it's a cheap dinner out, and if you just feel like you need to get out of the house on a Saturday,
their milkshakes are good.
Yeah,
love those milkshakes.
Yeah, they are good. Although don't order the butter burger there. It is not a genuine butter burger experience. They have the Wisconsin.
Somebody told me to have that and it was good, and I just I felt like a ball of grease afterwards.
It's not bad, but it's not if you can find a Culver's, you can have a real butter burger, because they invented it.
Culver's is king.
Yeah, but anyways. So over the past couple of weeks, I've had to drive out to, I had to first drive out to my cousin's wedding in Maryland, and then I had to, another week, I say last couple of weeks, this episode's coming out a month after I record this, so in September, I had to drive out to my cousin's wedding in Maryland, and I also had to drive to my brother-in-law's funeral in Southern Ohio. And so I ended up in Eau Claire. There's no Steak and Shake, but so I ended up back in Steak and Shake country again for a couple of times. And so we went to the Steak and Shake in Akron, Ohio, and the Steak and Shake in Middletown, Ohio. And it was the eeriest experience I've ever had because, I've gone to, I go to plenty of chain restaurants on the road. It's because if you're driving somewhere and you don't know the town, the chain restaurant's the safe thing to do because you know what you're going to get. If you go into but McDonald's are all different. Mm-hmm. Every McDonald's is completely different.
There's one on the way to Indianapolis we always take. We call it the Winchester McDonald's because it is entirely covered interior wise with 5 different kinds of plaid. Winchester as in Winchester Brothers from Supernatural.
Gotcha. My brain went to Winchester Mansion, and so I was like, are there stairs to nowhere in the bathroom?
Well, there's a Winchester, Indiana, or no, there's a Winchester, Ohio. So, but it's not the Winchester McDonald's. We just call it that.
Right.
There's another one on the border of Indiana that's just covered in bear stuff.
Yeah, but so, they're all unique. When you go into a Steak and Shake, though, it is inch per inch identical. The claw machines even are in the same spots. The fake plants in the corner by the bathrooms, the signs are placed exactly they built these things within an inch of each other. And then the two times we went to Steak and Shakes over these two trips, we were seated in the exact same booth. So we sat in the same positions in the restaurant. And it was the eeriest thing ever because they were identical to the one we used to go to all the time. So you have these firm memories of not only have I been here before, I've been here a lot, except I've never been here before. And then it's an eerie experience. But you know what? I wouldn't be surprised. I make jokes about this, but I wouldn't be surprised if any of these places end up haunted because in my experience, haunted places tend to be the most mundane places. Like,
absolutely.
I want to squeeze this in because we've been talking for a while, but I lived in a house that had a ghost. It was the most, I actually live down the street from it now because I've managed to have, even over the past, I've lived in Eau Claire probably a cumulative of like 12 years. Just there was a chunk of Indiana in the middle. And I've had 3 addresses on this street. I can actually, like, looking out my window, I can actually see my old apartment, but not the haunted one. But I used to live in this duplex down the street from about 2000 to 2003. So when I was in my early 20s. And I lived there with this with the host of the Famicom Dojo podcast, Sean Orange. He famicomdojo.tv. But so we lived there, and we also had a third roommate, Laura, and like stuff kept moving around on us. Like, we had 2 linen closets. Sean and I had the bedrooms on the first floor, and then for like a chunk of it in the middle, our friend Laura also rented like a room in the basement. But we had 2 linen closets, and stuff kept moving between them, and like towels would shuffle back and forth, and we don't know, like, we had separate towels. We don't know how this kept happening, and like we kept thinking that, like, maybe, like, Sean kept thinking, like, oh, maybe he did it, and then, like, stuff would start getting knocked over in front of us. The cat, my roommate's cat, Andromeda, would, like, freak out at anything and run away. And so slowly over time, we began to be convinced that we had a third roommate. Mostly I became convinced first because I kept hearing snoring in my room when I was the only one in the house. I would hear snoring from the opposite corner of my bedroom, from where my bed was. And at first I thought maybe the walls were thin and I was hearing one of my roommates, except it literally happened once when I was the only person in the house. Like, I ran around the house checking, and no one else was there. And that's when I yelled at it and told it could go anywhere else in the house but my room. And that's when the snoring stopped.
It worked.
Oh, that thing wanted attention. It was the most harmless experience I've ever had. But it I have a driver's cap that I've had for since it was my grandfather's hat. I've had it since he died in 99, and I put it on the kitchen counter, and it's literally it's a wool hat. This is not a light hat. And I put it on the kitchen counter, and I watched it slide off the horizontal counter onto the floor.
just yeet, huh?
Yeah, I was just like, so you talk about like ghost cats jokingly, but I swear to God, that's what this thing was, because because if you've ever experienced a cat that wants attention,
oh yeah,
they just knock things over, and then like sometimes they'll raise their paw and look at you. That's what this experience was like, and I would just, like, if you yelled at it, it would stop. If you yelled at it, it would just stop doing anything. I had an ex-girlfriend who would not go into my house because it's she refused to be alone in my house, like in any room in that house.
Wow.
And like I was just like, it's just the thing that lives in the house. It's fine.
Just deal with it. Just tell it to fuck off.
I mean, it mostly was just annoying. It was like, it's like, people talk about like scary experiences living with ghosts, and I'm just like, man, that ghost was just super annoying. And it's why I cleanse every space I live in and put up massive warding, not because I'm afraid of something coming to hurt me, but because I don't want something knocking over my shit again. And
because it's annoying.
It's annoying. And so there's a fun epilogue to this story. That duplex has, it's been, obviously it's been 15 years since I lived there. That house has been bought and converted into an 8 house for for people with Alzheimer's, like old people with Alzheimer's assisted living. and this duplex is now a small assisted living thing, and it says YOLO on the door. But all I'm thinking is that thing must be having a hell of a time.
Oh my god.
It's a house full of people who can't remember anything.
Hey, you know what? Maybe they will make friends. Like, I mean, I don't know. I worked with a couple people with dementia when I was working at Camp Millhouse, and I've worked in nursing homes before. So, I mean, maybe they both need someone to talk to. Maybe one of the Alzheimer patients can carry on a whole conversation with the ghost over in the corner that just needs a friend. Well, maybe it works out fine.
But I just feel bad because, some old person might be complaining about the other person in their room and the aid worker not believing them.
That's true.
Yeah, so I feel bad.
Yeah, well, I mean, at least at least they're not lonely.
Yeah, no, it's so, but that, it's the most mundane looking duplex. I don't think that was the ghost of any, living person. I never saw any sign of that. And I'm pretty sure that no one ever died in that house. I've lived in places where people have died. And
oh, yeah.
Because my dorm in college.
Well, I lived in a cabin out in the woods for a while, and I'm sure someone died there. They kept telling me. The people who owned those cabins were also my employers, and they would tell you all about the Eagles family, and they were born here, and they lived here, and they died here, and it's like, well, that's comforting.
Oh.
But it's $100 a month, though, so I'm not going to pass that up. But that people had died in that cabin, but I didn't feel anything, so I guess it was okay.
Well, that and just I'd just kick anything out.
Yeah.
I mean, although there's so it's actually to drag this into witchcraft for a little bit. I see this thing where people are I see people inviting things in their spells. When I browse the witchy tags on Tumblr and they talk about invite this thing in. I'm like, no, don't.
Nope, I nope out of that. No.
Nope. Because I had the ghost I lived with was a harmless experience. It was an annoying frustration. It was like having a cat that you didn't sign up for. and freaking out the cat you did sign up for. But I will tell you, when I was a young person and stupid, I'm not going to give the full details of this story, mostly because it involves a bunch of people who might not want the world to know that they were involved in witchcraft. And if I give away too many details about the time in my life that this took place, I'll say I was younger, but that's a pretty big window. I'll say I was within the first 5 years of my being a witch, and I've been a witch for 20 years. But I was a witch. I'll give you that clear. So this story happened anywhere from 1997 to 2002. We'll include my year of study in that time frame. There was a thing in a place where a bunch of us worked and spent a lot of time, and it started out with one of those experiences where you see something and then someone else walks up to you and say, "Hey, do you see that?"
Shit.
So it's that's why I said there are other people involved, because I'm this isn't sometimes you think you see a person or a form that's kind of translucent, and you think it's nothing, maybe you're hallucinating, maybe it's a trick of your eyes, but then the other person sitting next to you say, "Hey, do you see that translucent guy?" And you already see it and you're like, "Oh shit." You're hoping it's your eyes playing tricks. I've had a couple of experiences like that with the same people. We used to be kind of a magnet when we were together, but not in a good way. But so there was this thing, and it was bad, and it was but we kind of accidentally picked a fight with it. Like, I'm not going to say exactly what happened, but it was probably minding its own business, and then we got freaked out by it and tried to get rid of it.
Oh, man.
And it wasn't like we didn't know exactly what we were doing. And we tried to bind and excise something which was way more powerful than anything we expected. And so when people talk about shadow people, I don't like, there's a lot of weird lore out there, but all I know is that if this thing hit you, it felt like something was draining you of everything. That's the best.
A friend that I had in who was living in one of the retirement homes, she wasn't in an accident. She was actually my mom's age. When she started dying, like her brain started, and she was on a bad medication. When she started dying, she would see shadow people a lot, and I'm like, I don't doubt that in the place that you live, because it was a terrible, terrible nursing home.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. They do drain absolutely everything out of you.
I don't believe any other lore about these things. Like, there's so much like lore people have written down, and I'm just like, this sounds like ghost stories people are telling each other with no way to verify any of this. All I know is that it looked like it was roughly person shaped, looked like a walking shadow, and sure didn't want it to get a hold of you. And so we tried to get rid of it, and that's when the fun started.
Oh, no.
This thing kind of targeted us over time. Like, let's get to the point where, like, I was in college, I was in my dorm, and I got a letter from one of my sister's friends who had never met me, saying that after running after my website could tell that something was trying to attack me, and that I really needed to get my shields up. And this is while this was happening, while this thing was coming after us. And this is random strangers are sending me letters that things are coming after me, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, this is the weirdest, kookiest experience of my life. It's like, and so I just put up shields and I was fine. Like, it never bothered me again once I learned how to properly shield and wall myself, but it did keep going after someone else.
Oh no.
And it gave him a hell of a time. Like, mine again, like, once I learned how to properly, like, shield and protect myself, like, I was actually fine. Like, it wasn't really, you know, it's one of those things where you just shouldn't try to do things until you really know what you're doing. One of my friends had a much more negative experience, and the end solution after a couple of years involved a binding spell that involves multiple continents and items being buried in different places in the world, and that made it stop happening.
I'm not gonna lie, that sounds like fantasy fiction, and I would read
right?
that book.
Like, how is this like, and I know that I'm saying this and that people are gonna hear this and think that I'm full of shit. Like, I know exactly how crazy this stuff sounds, and to be fair, like, I don't believe that anyone was ever in physical danger. Like, I don't think this thing was capable of causing physical harm. It just was mean.
And that stuff gets to you.
And,
I mean, like, it will affect you physically, like, through emotional and mental trauma. I don't think anybody can actually hit, like, I don't know, like, what the limits are of a non-physical being towards a physical being in a physical sense.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are things that they can do, but so.
Well, I've seen things move my hat off the counter, so the harmless thing probably could have hurt me if it wanted to. You know, it could knock a box off. It's so weird, like, saying this stuff out loud, though, because I'm like, I know that this stuff happened, and I wouldn't believe any of this if someone, like, if I hadn't had these experiences and I was listening to someone else, like, say this on a podcast, I would think, wow, that person's full of shit.
Yeah, well, I mean, but to be fair, you've heard your fair share of, like, full of shit. Like, there's so much, like, there's a, there's a haunted place in Ohio. I've been reading up on this one because it sounds cool. It's the Cuyahoga State Park. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Cuyahoga?
Cuyahoga.
Cuyahoga. Okay.
At least that's how I've always heard it. I could be wrong too. Who knows?
I have never actually heard it said out loud because we don't really talk about it down here. It's like 2 hours north of us. If I lived up in Cleveland, probably I'd hear it more often.
It's okay. Everyone mispronounces Pokagon State Park. It's supposed to be Pokagon.
Pokagon. I know Pokagon.
Right, but everyone I know, including everyone I've met who goes there, and including people like in Wisconsin I know who stop through there. Like I've been there like 3 times in the last month because I keep driving back and forth. But everyone I know pronounces it Pokagon because of Pokemon. Pokemon State Park. Well, I mean, I was having the hardest time pronouncing Wapakoneta, the place I told you that had the opera house. Yeah.
I compromised by training myself to say waffle cone eater, Wapakoneta.
Anyway, sorry to interrupt your story.
It's all right. I mean, wacky Ohio names. Anyway, the state park used to be a place called Boston Mills, and it was like an old mill town. There's tons of ghost towns in Ohio, just like or unincorporated communities that they tried and it failed, or it just didn't work, or something bad happened. Usually, what happens is the mill that they were working with went under, or they could no longer mine the coal or the steel or whatever it is that was their livelihood at the time. So Boston Mills was one of those towns that people still lived there, and the government was like, well, we want to reclaim this land for state park purposes. You guys got to leave, and people weren't happy about that. So there was lots of protesting and stuff like that, but eventually it did become a state park. That's where the truth ends. That's all of the facts.
Okay.
From there, we have all of these wacky rumors, and you can see them develop based entirely upon like what the trends of the time were. Like the Boston Mills, I think, closed in the 1930s, something like that. I don't have an actual timestamp on it, but Boston Mills closed, and then people started getting all these rumors because they built the park, but they left the houses up. So people would go through the park and they'd see all these structures and what used to be there, and they would just go crazy with all of these stories. And you can still see one is that they burned everything. People were still inside the buildings, and the ghosts roam around the park at night. So that's the easy one. So let's go into medium mode, casual gamer mode. It was actually a chemical spill. And all of the townspeople mutated, and it was quarantined, and you had yeah, you're laughing.
But the Illuminati run out of the Denver airport.
Yep, they had to so they quarantined the place, and the mutated people of Boston Mills still roam the grounds. Like, they really do that. People really believe that they are still around, that they are mutated, and they have all these burn scars and like extra legs. That's something that people believe. So that's casual mode. Here's hard mode. Here's hard mode on this myth of Boston Mills. That it was actually a group of Satanists.
Oh, lovely.
Are
we talking Levian Satanists? Are we talking devil worship? What is our particular flavor?
We're going with devil worship instead of Levian Satanists. But I'm sure that this rumor probably started around the 90s. So they might
Well,
have,
of course
you know,
it did.
of course you know all about that, don't you?
Oh,
And they-
Satanic Panic coming up in a later
Satanic-
episode.
Oh, I'm sure you're going to touch on that at some point. But people believed that the town was actually a group of Satanists, and the government had to get them to disappear, you know. And as a protest, they built the town of Cuyahoga or whatever nearby, and still lived there, secretly worshiping the devil. And one of the ghosts that is part of the haunting of the state park is a bus full of children that was set on fire because of a Satanist who wanted to sacrifice all of the children to Satan, and the ghosts of the children roam the park. Like, you can watch in real time as
Dear
this
Lord.
as this very simple explanation goes from it's haunted because it's a ghost town, to quarantine because of chemical spill, to actual Satanists.
Chemical Spill was just a cover story, man. It was to cover up all the devil worship, man.
Yeah, actually, sure. If that's how you want to spin this,
That's all.
go
spin
right
it,
ahead.
man.
Well, part of the reason why they thought that it was Satanists is because, and they will cite, I have seen photos of this, and as a person who understands architecture, it just baffles me. Like, how do you not realize this? There is a church in the town where some of the like awnings have a vaguely upside down cross shape. It's a triangle. It's a triangle, and it's got a little extension in the middle bar to have like a little decorative filament.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's not an upside down cross. It's a triangle, which means it's Illuminati, not
Illuminati,
not
man. Run out of the Denver airport.
Exactly. So, like,
I don't know, man. Have you found the deep underground temple that the Satanists secretly constructed in the 1920s? That, if you search the forest hard enough, man, you'll find the secret entrance. But you gotta look out, man. They still make blood sacrifice down there. I can make up anything. I'm gonna add to the legend.
You literally just like outlined the entire book that I'm writing. So thank you. There are a ton of incorporated communities in Ohio that just failed, and they were communist attempts, like in the 1920s, 1910s, and earlier, before, you know, we had the Red Scare and all communism was bad forever.
I grew up in the Milwaukee area. We had socialist mayors, man. The sewer socialists.
Oh,
So you can-
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. There's one that this is, I don't know if it is haunted or if it is just bad construction.
That sounds like a great Tumblr. Haunted or just bad construction?
That's called McMansion Hell, I think but it's the place is called Utopia, which is probably the funniest part of it. But it was just going to be this kind of communist area, and everybody was going to help each other, blah, 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 blah. Trouble is, everyone hated each other. Like, all of the people who were involved in the building of it absolutely could not stand each other, so it fell apart. And that's like in the late 1800s.
Okay.
1910s, somebody else buys it, and they say, well, I like your idea, but I'm going to add spiritualism into it.
Oh, of course.
So they moved the mansion of the former mayor over to the lake.
That always gets you ghosts. You move a house, you get ghosts.
Well, here's how the ghosts happen. They moved the mansion over to the lake, and they were having this great big party to celebrate the reformation of Utopia, Ohio. And they were having a big dance party and everything, and it rained. And it rained, and it rained, and the lake swelled, and the mansion caved into the lake, and so many people are dead now.
Oh my god.
And that's the story of the haunting of Utopia, Ohio. and it's not really anything bad. It's just a bunch of dipshits who don't know how to do.
Well, I mean, it's bad in the sense that people died.
Well, I mean, like, usually you have, like, a murderer or a serial killer or a Satanist setting a bus on fire full of orphans or something.
Very lit. You know, I know I called Satanists dicks in the first episode of this podcast, but very rarely have I ever heard of any of them lighting a bus of children on fire. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, I guess. I've never heard of anyone setting a bus of children on fire. Like I think that's literally what Wesley Snipes' character does in Demolition Man at the beginning. Gets them sent into cryo sleep. Like, you know, I hate to say this. I have only seen Demolition Man once.
It's okay. It's
it's good. I mean, it's in the list of bad movies that are so bad they're good.
It's in that weird window after Jeffrey Dahmer's conviction and his murder in prison. It's in that weird window because he's supposedly in the cryo prison. And so, like, that was only like 5 years, like I say 5 or 6 years that Dahmer was in prison before he got killed. So it's a really specific time in history when that movie was made, based on the. I grew up in Milwaukee, man. We knew there was a serial killer convicted while I was a kid. So he worked at Ambrosia Chocolate. Oh.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
just worked there, huh?
Yeah, he did. It was,
okay.
Well, like I said, like I was a little kid, but it was all over the papers, like, you know, and it was every piece of media consumed was about this, you know, massive serial killer who got caught in my hometown, you know, when I was a child living there. So, you know, it kind of burns into your memory everything about those years.
That's fair. But on the subject of Jeffrey Dahmer, he actually went to OSU, and
yeah, he's from Ohio.
Yeah,
it all connects.
See, there we go. And if you look on the website of things that are haunted in Ohio, you will find listings about Jeffrey Dahmer. Because if you mention Jeffrey Dahmer and OSU, it's haunted. Apparently, it's like he was only here for one semester.
Yeah. It's not like, you know, it's Cato Kalin when he goes is not going to haunt UW Eau Claire. Mm-hmm. Even though you can find episodes of Cato and Friends on YouTube now that my college, like, Cato Kalin went to my college.
See, I mean, my college doesn't have anything cool. It just has David Letterman and racist pizza.
I feel like that's better than Cato Kalin.
Yeah, this is the first time I've actually heard that name.
The O.J. Simpson trial?
Oh my God! See, like I was way.
He was living on O.J.'s couch.
See, I was way too young. Like I think I was 10 when all of that was going down.
I think that's a wonderful place to end the episode, is on Cato Kalin on our episode about ghosts, because nothing's more dead than that man's career.
Oh man.
Thank you for listening to Bullshit Free Witchcraft. I have been Trey Dorn, and thanking Lee Bradford for joining me this episode, and also for sticking on to the end of episode 3, which I technically never credited her for. If you want to financially support this show, you can go to patreon.com/TRAEGORN. That's patreon.com/Traygorn. There's a G in the middle. And if you want to follow this show on social media, you can like it on Facebook at facebook.com/BSFreeWitchcraft. Or you can follow me on Twitter at TRAEGORN, or you can follow me on Tumblr at TRAEGORN.tumblr.com. And as always, I'm having a rough time figuring out exactly what to say at the end of the show. So this time around, just whenever possible, get spooky. Or something. I don't know. See you guys at the end of November sometime.
Fair.
All right.
All right.
That was good.
All right. Hey,
gonna...
we made it to an hour, almost to an hour and a half this time.
Well,
we've
only been recording for an hour and 12 minutes. And almost all of this is almost all going into the show. This is just going to be a really long episode. It's the Halloween episode on a Witchcraft podcast. It can go long.
You could split it into two if you wanted.
I could, but I think I'm just going to toss it all. Like normally the show's only going to be a half hour, and I'm going to preface that at the beginning of the show that this is going to be a long episode, and they don't normally be this long. But I think all of this is too good. I can't cut any of this.
I think the part about the flaming bus. I think the part about the flaming bus absolutely needs to stay in.
Yeah.
Because it's just ridiculous.
Yeah. I'm gonna stop recording now.
All right.